Okay, so here's our project today. What we basically have is a residential gate, an opening. And what happened was we had some new concrete poured here, and the gate post, the old one was removed because it really wasn't put in properly. And a new one was put in place. I did not put this gate in originally, but I did cut and paint this new post and gave it to the concrete people in order for them to go ahead and lay it in, which they have. Now that the concrete is fully cured, we're now ready to hang the gate. Okay, so I have the old post next to the new one, and the old post, as you see, has been completely cut off and removed. But I want to draw your attention here to these barrel hinges. This gate was installed not that long ago from my understanding, and the barrel hinges are still good. We are probably going to reuse those just to save the homeowner some cost. And not only that, if you notice here on this barrel hinge, there's a little bit of extra buildup here, some little plate that was put in to kind of bridge the gap. And it's the same down here on the bottom one. You can get a shot of that. Those were put in place in order to space the gate opening out right according to the way it was. I'm not sure if it's still going to lay that way or not, but in the meantime what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut those off at the shop and reuse them and line everything up and see if things will line up properly. If not, I'll just go ahead and shame them off or remove this little extra piece right here entirely. But the barrel hinge itself, as you can see, is in really good shape, so those can definitely be reused. Anyway, let's take this piece back to the shop and cut these off and see where we go from there. Okay, in order to get those barrel hinges off along with the tabs, I'm going to go ahead and use this bandsaw of mine. This is a horizontal bandsaw, but it also has the added bonus of being vertical when you need it to be. I'm going to go ahead and snap it up into position and go ahead and take these things off. Okay, now we have the saw up vertically, so we're going to go ahead and begin the process. Okay, so here we go. Let me fire up the saw. We're going to get this thing cut. Okay. Okay, so the question might come up, well, why not just use the plasma cutter, or why not use an angle grinder, or perhaps maybe even a Sawzall or something like that? And the answer is, yeah, you could use all that stuff, but you're definitely not going to get such a nice, smooth, accurate, flat cut like this. I mean, this thing is like flat right on the metal. There's maybe the tiniest bit that was left behind, but it is nice and flat, 90 degrees. If I swing over here to the actual pieces themselves that I cut off, look at what a nice, smooth, flat bottom. All this requires is a little bit of dressing on the edges, and these things can go right back where they were on the new ones. And hopefully, the little spacers that were added on there will be just the right amount to make the new pole work perfectly. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and dress up the edges of these a little bit. We just need to take this little sharp edge off and also bevel it in a little bit so that the weld will take. Here we go. Okay, so here we have the situation where the fence was really not level at all. Excuse me, the gate, not level at all. So the only thing we could do to compensate is to lift it up and shim it, and also try to help the other side as well. But what happens is now we have this barrel hinge. You see I'm putting it in here into place, and we have a considerable gap here in between. And in doing the measurement, it's a 7/8 of an inch gap. Now, that's not ideal, but it's really the only way to fix this, because if not, we're going to have to try to actually take this thing apart and refabricate it, and there's no way that the homeowner wants to do that. So we're going to go ahead and add to the back part of this here, we're going to add a 7/8 of an inch thick piece in order to bridge the gap. Okay, so I got the bandsaw set up to cut some 7/8 thick pieces, 7/8 by 1 inch thick pieces of stock, so that I can bridge the gap between the barrel hinges and the actual gate. So anyhow, let's go ahead and cut it. I have to be honest, ever since I bought this this bandsaw here, I've just been in heaven. It has been such a tremendous time saver for me. In this instance, I had a piece of plate that I'm using to use as spacers, and it's not squared up. So now that I've cut them to the proper thickness, now I'm going to use the bandsaw to square up the pieces. So here goes that cut. Such a tremendous time saver. I don't know what I'd do without it. Okay, in order to give this thing a little bit more to grab onto, I've decided to go ahead and just lightly bevel the edges. That way we can get a little bit more weld, a little bit more surface area welded together, a little bit more penetration. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and bevel these edges. Okay, and there you have it, and I'll go ahead and do this to the other side as well as the other piece. Okay, I went ahead and I've now beveled this spacer, and I've clamped it to the barrel hinge, and as you notice here, I'll try to get a close-up shot of this. Hopefully it'll focus in. We've gone ahead and beveled these angles here, beveled both edges, and that way we can put a nice weld bead right in between there and make sure it seals up well. So let's go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to go ahead and show what I do before I actually MIG weld. This here is an anti-splatter nozzle dip. I'm not really going to give you the manufacturer's name because, well, I'm not really promoting anybody in general, but there are many manufacturers of this stuff, and they're all kind of about the same. Some are spray and some are like this. It's kind of like a jelly type of a thing, like a Vaseline. And what you do with this stuff is, I know a lot of people like to dip in there, but it's really unnecessary. I take a little bit on my finger and I put it all over the contact tip area, and then I take the nozzle here and I take my pinky and put a little bit inside the nozzle itself. Doesn't take much. You can also use a brush. Sometimes I use the brush too to take care of this, but the finger is just as good, I think. Anyhow, a little bit more on there, just a tiny bit, not much. It doesn't take much of this stuff. And what this is going to do, this is anti-spatter, and so when you get the inevitable spatter all over your gun, inside and out, it's basically going to come off like nothing, and nothing's going to stick in there. So really a good preventative maintenance type of a measure you can take. Okay, to start this off, I'm going to go ahead and put a little tack on one side, and then I'm going to go on the other side and fill in welding the rest of it there. It's basically a circular motion, or a cursive E, whatever you want to call it, is what I decided to use on this. And the weld bead's a little bit heavy, but that's okay. Remember, we gouged this out, so what I'm more interested in is that we get some weld penetration into the groove so that we can have some good solid weld in there that'll sustain the weight of this gate. You can see a little bit of fire sparking up here, and that's as a result of the paint that is still kind of coating this thing. No big deal, just blow it out and we're ready to go once again. And here comes the last weld of this particular piece. Okay, so here are the finished welds on the barrel hinges here, as you can see, and they're pretty acceptable looking welds. I mean, they're not bad at all. They're in there deeply penetrated because we did a bevel. But part of the reason why I did the bevel is because I really had the idea that I wanted to eliminate the weld and make this a flush look here. And so what I've done on this other one is I've gone ahead and I've eliminated the weld. You see, here's the weld where the weld was, right along this edge right here, and it's now been sanded down flush. You can see on top here there's a previous weld from what it was connected to before, and I'd hate to have a weld here and a weld below it, and it just starts looking kind of junky, you know. So I thought just to clean it up a bit I would just eliminate the weld that I put in here, and so that was my primary reason for doing the bevel in the first place. Okay, so that's it for part one of this gate project. I hope you've enjoyed it thus far, and stay tuned. I'll try to get the next one finished by next week. Hey, before we leave, just a quick reminder to visit weldfever.com and get your logo merchandise. Help support the show, and we really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.